My two biggest takeaways, one is I can do anything for 1 minute. And it really tied in my previous swim days with now, I can do anything for a minute. I can change a diaper for 1 minute at 3 a.m. I can get out of bed and I can do this kind of thing. And I'm sure there'll be screaming toddler days where I'm I can survive 1 minute of crying. I know I can do this.
Welcome to the Birth Education Center podcast, hosted by myself, Care Messer, an entrepreneur, birth educator, and doula. My team and I want to help you discover your options in birth and postpartum, how to find your voice, and how to use that voice to navigate our maternal healthcare system. You and your baby are not just a number. This information includes doulas too. Now let's get started. Today we have Alicia and Gino here to tell their birth story. They were in my classes in October, and Alicia is nursing right now. So we're going to start with Gino. It's a little quieter. Welcome, Gino, to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Let's start with you. When you first came into class, what were your worries about having a baby, being a dad, whatever? What were you coming in with?
I mean, shoot, there's a ton of anxiety and stress that's involved with becoming a dad. I mean, from the very first moment you find out that you're pregnant, when Alicia told me, it was like, oh my gosh, everybody has that coming to moment where you're like, wow, we're pregnant, we're going to have a kid. And it's so exciting. And there's also just so much stress that's involved with that. So, I mean, everything leading up to that, of course, when you first find out that you're pregnant, you're all excited and nervous. But then as time kind of goes on and we got closer to our baby's birth, you kind of get used to that. But taking the class really got me in the mindset of actually having a baby. You get used to this time frame of, okay, we're pregnant. It's a happy time. We have people celebrating us. We're getting ready for the baby, but you don't really realize that this baby is coming. It's going to be real.
I mean, maybe we as women do because someone's kicking us in the ribs all the time. But as a dad, right, nothing's happening inside your body.
Exactly. Yeah. So taking the course was extremely beneficial to me and us as partners, because for me, it got me in the mindset of, we're going to have a baby. I need to prep and really be one with Alicia and one together in our relationship. And so it was really good for me.
Well, and what kind of prep did you do in class? Yes, you're watching a ton of vagina videos because I try my best to desensitize you. And we had a really good class, a lot of interaction, a lot of partner talk. It was fantastic that way. But what did you do for prep for you as the partner, as a dad?
I think a lot of the prep work came from really listening to Alicia during these conversations. Because for me, you're a dad, you just go into it. You don't have these concerns that my wife does. I'm not the one that's going to be nursing. I'm not going to be the one giving birth. So I think not as much prep, but it gave me more of an awareness. Each class, I would learn from Alicia, from listening to the concerns that she had. So it prepped me better for understanding her in the future and during these classes to say, these are the concerns and we're going to open up this line of communication. So I can prepare better to support you, and I can prepare better through these classes to open my communication. And I feel like that's the prep that I did.
It's exactly right, because the class does open up communication. We have conversations that are pretty deep compared to, oh, we're not just two single people that got married or together, because parenting is a whole other ballgame.
Absolutely.
And supporting someone through labor, because you can't fix it as a guy. You have to be with it. And you have to be okay with supporting sometimes a painful process, sometimes an intense process. And from your point of view, it can look way more intense maybe than even she's feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like you're saying, a lot of that prep for that came through these classes. I would have never been able to expect any of that. I mean, we could have taken a simple hospital class that would have told us, this is going to be labor. This is what's typical. Good luck. But really, through the class, it was like, this is what labor can be and should be. And all the wives that were on there, or partners that were on there, saying, what are your concerns? And so it kind of opened up this new view of birth for me. And it prepared me better to support her mentally, emotionally, physically, through some of the videos that we watched and all the tools that were given.
Yeah, because you really have to be able to be on the fly with whatever shows up. And you guys had a few of those moments. So I love the group classes for that reason, because everybody's coming from a different perspective of what maybe they are anticipating. So it does broaden your view compared to if we were just doing a private class. All right, Alicia, welcome back. Well, she's, still nursing. But what did you get from the classes that helped you prepare? Like, what fears did you come in with?
My fears coming in was just preparing to be a mom and making sure that Gino was on board in the delivery room with me. Because my background as a nurse practitioner, I knew what was coming medically. And it was really like changing my mindset and making sure he was on board, that I really wanted to get out of the class. And I definitely did.
Yeah, it was really fun. I love when I have nurses come in because they already know the medical stuff, but then they have to learn what's actually normal.
Yeah, exactly.
There can be a blending, but it's totally different than maybe what you learned in school and what you saw in rotations.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so let's start with your birth story. Where did it start?
I went into labor 2 days before my due date. Gino and I, it was the day after Thanksgiving, and we went for a midday swim. My background is in playing water polo, and I thought I swam too hard. When I swim too hard, I would get some cramping, and then the cramping just never went away. And I was like, okay, Gino, like this probably is it. So we went to like a nice dinner and ate some spicy food just to really try and kick it off, which was fun. And my, like, true contractions started around 11:30 at night. We laid down for bed at 11, and so Gino was already asleep, and I was like, "Okay, I'll just hang out." I did some journaling. I took some pictures of my bump, and, like, I was up all night, but I was just hanging out. It was so fun.
And you let him sleep, which if you don't need him, he'll be fresh for you. So great job.
Exactly.
That was compassionate of you.
Thank you. So I just timed my contractions and hung out. And finally, around 4 in the morning, I was like, okay, these are coming every 5 minutes, lasting about a minute. It's been about an hour. So probably time to go in. So I woke Gino up and we called my mom because she was going to come down from Ventura County. And she wakes up at 4:30 every morning. So I sent her a text. I was like, hey, mom, just call me when you're up. And so she called and she's like, Alicia? And I was like, Mom, we're gonna go to the hospital. She's like, okay, I'm coming.
It's always so exciting to know, right? Like, jump in the car. She's been waiting for that call for 9 months or probably half of her lifetime.
So we drove to the hospital and my contractions were not too bad at that time, but I put my 40 blinks on because I was like, it's dark. These are kind of intense. And Gino, like, I just don't want to deal with him driving. Like,
The 40 blinks are one of the best tools you can have for labor. 'Cause for those reasons, block everything out, stay focused on your belly.
it's so true. So we got to Sharp Mary Birch by I think 5 a.m. and they did my first cervical check and I was already 5 centimeters dilated
Yay.
and just kind of hanging out. One of the nurses came by and she's like, "You're already 5 centimeters. I can't believe this. People are usually screaming right now."
You're like, I got tools, girl. I practiced.
Truly. That was my best takeaway from the class. As a water polo player, we would do these really hard swim sets in college that would last a minute, and then you would rest, and then you'd go again. And that was exactly what contractions were for me. Like, you can swim 100 free and then rest, and you have to rest, and then you go again, and it sucks, but you do it. And that's exactly what labor was.
It's so much more of a mind game than a physical thing. Because if you show up freaking out, you bet it's going to hurt 10 times worse. But if your mindset is, I can do anything for a minute, it's intense for that minute, and then you rest for the 4 in between, yeah, it can totally be done. But you have to loosen up that fear.
Exactly. And just because I've done really crummy swim sets that last a minute long, I've been in some good amount of I hate this mode for a minute, and then you rest, and then you like look at your teammate and say, okay, let's go again. And so that's kind of what I did with Gino.
Fantastic. And Gino didn't have to do any of the swim sets or any of the contractions.
Exactly.
And Gino, how were you driving her to the hospital and everything like that? Were you mellow fellow?
Yeah, I was trying to stay as mellow as I could. You know, for me, it's just a matter of fact. Okay, it's time to go. Let's pack up the car and we'll get there as quick as we can.
You did make sure to shave your face before we left.
I did. Yeah. So I was pretty calm and collected. You know, I had to go shave my face. I had to look my best for my baby.
Never knowing if you'll be in there for a 5 o'clock shadow or not, but you weren't, but you could have been.
Yep.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, at least you weren't shaving your body and everything, like for skin to skin. I got to make sure I'm buff, ready to go. Oh, that's awesome. Well, so you're finally getting checked in. There, you had a little bit of a switch up with your heart. Can you tell the audience about that?
So I have a pre-existing heart condition that's never really affected me in my day-to-day life, but I'm followed by a cardiologist yearly. And my OB knew about it, but with my cardiac condition, there's some medications I can't take. And I finally printed off the list of medications at my 32-week appointment, and the list is extensive. And she's reading through it at my appointment, and she's like, "Oh, Pitocin's on here." Like, all right, and Benadryl's on here, and Zofran's on here. And it's just like all of the commonly used medications for labor.
So don't throw up. Make sure your surges are going great by themselves. Oh my gosh.
And so she then took the medications and went to my cardiologist, and they made a really extensive care plan that I knew about before. And that care plan would be like, we really wanted to avoid induction, which I did too. So it worked fine. And no Zofran or Benadryl if we could avoid it, things like that. But once I got to the labor and delivery floor, when they admitted me, I found out that I had to be like hardwired to the cardiac monitors versus having like a telemonitor pack. And so I had monitors strapped to my belly and monitors strapped to my chest. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't even get up and walk like I planned.
That's so frustrating because you were planning on wireless to be able to move around and do your labor.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden I'm like in this bed, but I knew that things would come up in labor. That's what we talked about in class. And so I was just like, all right, it is what it is. I'll find a comfortable position in bed and we'll keep going.
And so were you able to move around in the bed at all, or were you literally sitting on your butt?
I sat on my butt almost through 8 centimeters dilation until I think it was 11 a.m. And then
Wow.
And then my nurse, who was so awesome, she was like, "Why don't we try some other positions?" And I was like, "You barely let me go to the bathroom on my own." But she did kind of get me up. But the first 4 hours in that room, I was just on my butt the whole time.
Oh my gosh. I think part of your training as an athlete probably helped with that because you're
Yeah.
like, I've got endurance and I can do anything. This is a short time frame. And I think that athletes have a little advantage sometimes over us people that have never been an athlete because you're a master at the mind game. When something unexpected happens, you deal with it.
Yeah, it's totally true. And the surges really weren't that bad, to be very honest. I knew they'd be intense, but it didn't feel much worse to me than my really bad period cramps that I used to get with the copper IUD. And so I would just like chill for the full minute and look up at the ceiling and be like, okay, this is happening. And then I'd come back and talk to Gino and try and just like really relax and do what I wanted in between.
That's key, right?
Yeah, truly. And we got out our Monopoly Go game, and I was probably like about 7 centimeters dilated. And we like dealt the cards out. I have a picture, but then we realized we'd never played it before. So we had to read the instructions, and I was like, this is too much. Forget it. Cute idea. Didn't work out.
My brain is not going to handle instructions right now, but we have a picture. So that's all that really matters.
I think if we knew how, we totally could have played and it would have been like a good distraction and fun, but it was too much.
Did you have your playlist? Did you have anything going or were you just chatting the whole time?
Initially, we were talking, and as the time went on, then we turned on the playlist, and we actually failed to make a playlist. So Gino turned on a playlist that I use for like a triathlon that I did. And it's super eclectic. And the cardiac nurse in the room was like, this is the most interesting playlist I've ever heard. And Gino was like, well, we're doing it.
Because we failed to plan, even though we talked about playlists like 100 times in class.
It was Gino's job. And he came through, but in a different way.
Oh, that's so funny.
You know, you gotta do it live right there.
Well, Gino, tell me about advocacy because you had to have built some kind of rapport with that team in order to be in that situation and sitting in the bed during labor.
Like I said, when we came into the hospital, I'm a pretty easygoing guy, I feel like, and I can talk to pretty much everybody and anybody. So when the nurses first came in and did the first cervical check, I was talking with them and kind of in a serious way, just figuring it out where we were at and being serious about the medicine. And then I would be crack little jokes here and there to kind of lighten things up and just make it fun because during the times where you're not serving or having those contractions, you can have fun. And that's what made the experience for, I feel, me and her and the entire team more fun. And it made it more connected. And it was a good experience overall because of that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be so serious and intense. Laughter is key to having a good experience. And you guys are not non-laughter people. So, okay, so you're 7 centimeters, you're sitting there, it's getting more intense. You used a squat bar. So tell me how you're using a squat bar if you're kind of stuck to the bed.
So the nurse was so nice and was like, let's try this at least. And I was maybe like an hour past when she did the 8 centimeter check. So progressing towards 9, I would only assume. And so she put the bar up because I really had wanted to deliver with the squat bar. We watched all those squatting videos and I was like, ah, this is me. Like, this is how I'm going to deliver. And so I get up there with all these monitors. It takes forever to get up there. And I think I have one contraction over the squat bar. And on the next contraction, my water finally breaks. And it hadn't broken up until that point. And I was just like, oh my gosh, what do I do now?
Intensity when that baby hits that cervix.
Yes. And it was just like, whoa. And so I stayed on the squat bar for a little bit longer and then I laid back down and then we tried all fours facing backwards towards the bed because it was like so hard to change position.
Yeah.
And I think with all of the necessities to change positions, because you have to move the monitors and move the belly monitors, I kind of got out of the mindset of, okay, just 1 minute and then I rest and then 1 minute and then I rest. And once I got out of that and the baby hit my cervix because the water broke, I just was like, oh boy, this is so much more intense than it has been the whole time. And I also realized later on that it had been 12 hours and I hadn't had any food. Like the last time I really did eat was when we went out to dinner. And I had a little juice through delivery, but if I did it again, I probably would have eaten before we went in and made sure I consistently took in some sort of nutrition throughout the labor.
And that's a distraction, right? Because you're so focused on, I can't move. I just got to get through every surge. You're not even thinking about food unless somebody is prompting you, and they're not going to prompt you at a hospital, right?
Yeah. And so she checked my cervix again after I transitioned back from the hands and knees, and I was 9.5 centimeters, like right there. And I was like, okay, a couple more contractions. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And I had her check again, maybe a few surges later, and it was still 9.5. And I was like, oh, I need an epidural. And she's like, okay, are you saying that you want this epidural? And I was like, I don't know. Let me try again. And so then I try again, and still a few more later, I was like, okay, I want this because in my head, there's no gold medal for delivering naturally. I'm at my wits' end in these moments, and I just want to be healthy and present for my baby's birth.
Well, and you used it as a tool. You didn't walk in, I'm so scared. You know what I mean? You had the education and the knowledge and the understanding that when I use that, if I use that, it's a tool. It's not a rescue meter.
Yeah. And I was really glad because we talked about in class that you really can get an epidural at 10 centimeters if you want. And I was 9.5 and I was like, yep, I want this now. And so the anesthesiologist came up who I had met previously because he was part of that care plan. And I was like, okay, nurse, please check one more time. If this is 10 centimeters, I don't want it, even though he's standing here. He's like, okay, no problem. I'll wait. And she checks again, still 9.5. I'm sure because I was just really panicked by that time, just like, oh, what's happening? And the team was so on board with me choosing it so late. And it worked out really well.
Fantastic. Well, and you delivered pretty quickly after that. So you're probably right that it was the tightening of the panic because you went bleh and baby came out. So tell me about the pushing part or the next bit.
Once I got the epidural, they had to do it in a special way because of the medications that I could and could not have for the cardiac condition. And so they titrated it up slowly. And I think it took about 20 minutes for it to fully enact. And then 20 minutes later, I pushed and had the baby. But I was laboring on my back. And I think that there was probably a few decels in his heart because two nurses came in and then everything kind of regulated out because the nurse turned me on my side. And then, so they left. And then his head was crowning. And I ended up delivering on my left side with my right foot in the stirrup. And it was great for me,
Fantastic.
better than on my back.
Much better. Gino, how was that for you?
The whole process of getting from the epidural, like when her water broke to birth, I mean, it's intense. It's intense. When her water broke, it was like a different type of pain for her. She had been doing extremely well up until that point. All the nurses were thoroughly impressed. You're at 9 centimeters and you're still like, no, I'm okay. She was having conversations. No, I'm okay. Let's just talk through this. But like you were saying, we learned through the class that the epidural was a tool, and she felt comfortable to advocate for herself what we wanted. She wanted to give birth naturally all the way up until that point. But having that tool in our back pocket saying, you know what, like you're saying, you don't get a gold medal for this. As long as you're comfortable and healthy and happy, that's all that matters. So keeping that in her back pocket, it was like I was the one that was able to stay calm and cool as she was going through all of this and say, it's okay if you want this, it's okay. Advocating for her and in the room saying it's okay. She ended up getting that epidural, and 40 minutes later, she gave birth to our beautiful baby. It's just awesome to watch.
And how did the skin to skin, like what happened when baby came up?
It was like the most surreal moment.
And I was going to say, for me and for us, we didn't know the sex of our baby before it was born. So during our whole labor and delivery process, anyone that come into the room, they would be alerted and saying, hey, they don't know the gender. It's a surprise. And dad is going to announce the gender when it's born.
And then we would tell them to guess the gender because that was just like so silly and fun. We like almost started a tally at one point of the nurses' guesses.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So it was a fun experience all the way through. A little intense here and there, but being so intact with her emotions and feelings, and through all of our conversations that we've had through your class and even after the classes, which would incite more conversation about different things, it was a really good experience. I mean, she's an all-star. It's just wild to watch and be there and support through all that. So it was a great experience, I feel like.
Well, and to me, it's not about whether it's medicated or not medicated. It's whether parents felt like they could advocate and have good communication with their providers and be heard, because that's what makes a good birth experience, not feeling bullied or pushed into a certain event or procedure or whatever. Knowing how to talk and communicate, that's what keeps the power in the whole process.
Yeah. And I feel like Alicia did actually more of the advocating for herself during that time of the epidural, where the pain was so great that most people were just like overwhelmed by the situation. The medical staff is in there. There's an anesthesiologist that's there getting stuff ready. And normally individuals will kind of crumble under that and just be quiet. But she was at 9.5 centimeters and was like, wait, don't do it yet. Hold on. And they were like, okay, yeah, sure. We'll check again if you want to. We'll go ahead. And she had another surge and they checked again and she was like, okay, do it. Go ahead. So it was good that the advocation was there and they stepped off and they waited and respected what you wanted.
Fantastic. And Alicia, do you think being a nurse practitioner gave you a different insight as to how to advocate for yourself because you have been on the other end being a provider?
No, really, I learned this through our hypnobirthing classes, and I got the chance that was kind of unique to practice it before I was in the hospital. My dad was hospitalized and he's really sick. And we had to go up and miss one of our hypnobirthing classes to be with him for a week while he was on a ventilator. And there was this really unique time where we're trying to make this important decision that is like very life altering, whether we should wake him up off the ventilator or wait one more day. And I had the ability that I learned through the class the week before to be like, are we in a medical emergency? And the doctor was like, well, no. And I was like, okay, then I'd like to take a minute to have everyone step out with just my dad, my mom, Gino, and I, and we'll figure out what our choice is going to be. And then we'll come out and let you know. And that practice, because the doctors walked out, they were happy. They came back in. They were like, okay, what's the decision? We want what's best and what you guys want. And there was just like no judgment of us taking a second for ourselves. And so to practice that 2 months before I delivered just really gave me that power to find my voice. And my dad's doing better. So that's good too.
That's so good because that was a lot of stress. I think all of us sent up a lot of prayers for you guys when you were up there. Well, what advice would you give new parents, pregnant, early on, middle of pregnancy, whatever? What advice would both of you give to them? We'll start with Gino.
There's just so much. There's so much advice. I would say really set up a plan for birth, talk to your partner, see what their wants and needs are, be on the same page. It's a really big deal, especially because women have a different thought process about the birthing process than guys do. I mean, to put it bluntly, we are not the ones giving birth. We don't think about that stuff. And we're there to pat you on the shoulder and say, hey, you're okay. But there's a lot more than just that. Like really getting deep into these conversations, say, what are your concerns? What do you want for this? Do you want an epidural? When do you want the epidural? Is there a secret word that you want? What are your fears postpartum? Talking about all of this stuff and laying it out on the table, just having a clear line of communication is extremely important for that birthing process.
It's really becoming a team so that if she can't speak for herself because of intensity or whatever, you can be like, actually, this is what our plan was. I'm going to double check with her, but this is where we want to go with it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And going off of that, like one of the things that came up in our fears journaling class for me was that I knew we were going to spend Christmas Day with Gina's large Italian family. Like there's a lot of them and they're really loud and they're so wonderful. But I was really afraid of bringing my 4-week-old baby into this environment with all of his family and like the spread of disease kind of thing. Holidays, people see each other, they're going places more often, and how our little baby would be able to go through that. And we talked about it in October and we talked about it in November and then we talked about it before Christmas and we had the best Christmas ever. And Gino, like as Christmas was starting and the family was getting there, Gino was like, okay, well, he hasn't had his 2-month-old vaccines and it's just going to be us holding him. But like after that, everyone's welcome to hold him.
That's actually a brilliant plan, you guys. And it wasn't offensive to the family either.
Yeah, there was like maybe 5 minutes of, oh man, like I really wanted to hold the new baby. And then everyone was good with it and everyone enjoyed seeing him and he was around everyone. But I felt safe and Gino felt good about it. And it was that communication of being open with our fears that really helped that along.
And there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable with family and setting boundaries. But if we're not used to it, you two have to be on the same page so that it's kind of a united, hey, it's out of love. It's not because we don't like you.
Truly. And it's hard to do. It's really hard to do because I don't know that Gina and I are very skilled in that because it's out of love. We want everyone to enjoy our baby because he brings so much joy, but for his safety, it was the best.
And Gino, what do you think you guys needed help with most for postpartum that you just didn't have? What would you tell parents like, hey, you might really want to do this? Because you guys are doing it. You guys are doing it solo. There's no one here to help you.
So I have a few things. One, we set up a meal train. So if you have the ability or have some friends that can set up a meal train, contact one of your best friends and just be like, hey, would you mind just setting this up? There's an app for it somewhere, I'm sure. I actually don't know what the app was, but one of Alicia's friends set it up. She got phone numbers from us and she sent it out and emailed or texted everyone on there. They signed up for certain dates on there and they brought us food, which was amazing for postpartum because as a new parent, you don't realize everyone tells you how wonderful it's going to be. You have this new bundle of joy. It's so much fun. You see yourself at the park with butterflies and rainbows, and it is work. It is 24/7 work. And I'm not kidding you when it's 24 hours a day. For me as a new parent, I wasn't expecting to be awake 24 hours a day for 3 weeks. And I am very lucky to be home with Alicia. So that's something else that I want to say is if you're going to be home with your partner, to be there, be supportive in any way that you can, because being there for her, she's going through extreme physical changes, extreme emotional changes, and learning a new relationship with this baby and a new relationship within ourselves and our new family. So I guess realizing that and thinking about that before all that happens as a partner, I kind of thought about that as we were going through these classes. Some of these issues would come up and I would say, okay, well, let's forecast some of this. because that's a real big deal to kind of know that as a partner, and you don't shake your head or, where is this coming from? You kind of expect those things, and you meet them with a sort of grace, if you will. You know that it's coming. So I would say prep for that as a partner. I would also say practice patience as a partner. Postpartum is extremely hard in so many different ways. Learning that relationship, breastfeeding is not easy. Everybody on the movies they just plop you on, or you see somebody in the park, they plop. No, it's not like that. This baby is brand new. They don't know how to sneeze. They don't know how to burp. They don't know how to feed. So they are learning all of that. And mom is going to get frustrated because she thinks it's going to be easy. And this baby doesn't know there's a bunch of tension up front that nobody tells you about. So practicing that patience with your partner and learning that patience in the relationship and learning about all of that and just practicing that patience at 3 a.m. when you're exhausted and saying, this is not about me. This is about our baby. And I have to be patient no matter what I'm feeling. So practicing patience is a big one for me.
Oh, those are such big lessons, Gino, and such good advice. Part of why we're in class together is so that we can open those doors of communication, because it's a whole other level of communication when there's a baby involved. But you're right, forecasting what could be ahead and how we're going to circumvent those issues that show up makes a huge difference in how you handle it in the moment when you're so overtired.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like we were saying, if you have a game plan or if you've pre-thought about it before, once you get in that situation, you have some sort of way of working together as a team.
So good. Alicia, what about you? What do you think that you needed more help with for postpartum to help other families prepare?
I wish that I would have been given some sort of checklist. I'm really type A, clearly. And having a checklist of what a baby needs when it cries would have been so helpful for the first 5 days. I think I found one online that was like, here's the things you can think about when your baby's crying. Do they have a wet diaper? Do they need to be fed? Is their temperature okay? Are they too hot or cold? Is their stimulation level okay? Are they overstimulated, understimulated? And just having that like mental framework of like, okay, this diaper's fine. I fed him 30 minutes ago, it helps me just like really calmly approach how to best care for him. The other thing that came up for me when Gino was talking is he developed this like routine of night time that we didn't even talk about. But after giving birth, I was not walking around. I was barely getting out of bed. And he took it upon himself to, when the baby was crying, get up in the middle of the night, change the diaper, bring him to me to feed. And then he would sit up and rock him back to sleep while I went back to sleep. And it was just like the most magical help. And if I talk to my friends about how to prepare for postpartum, it would be to set some sort of routine up before, you know, being in that situation.
Yeah, he's a dad postpartum doula, because that's what a postpartum doula does. So fantastic. Maybe you should rent him out while you've got this time home, because that's a little extra income.
No way, he's mine forever.
Do you guys really have a lot of time to be with the baby because of the care that your bosses give you at your jobs? How early did you have to set that up and see what was offered on your plan for that stay at home stuff, Gino?
So I kind of looked into it quite a while ago when I knew she was pregnant, and started looking through the avenues of how many weeks off did I have and plan out how postpartum care was going to look for us and how we wanted to handle it. But yeah, I was lucky enough to get 4 weeks with my company. He was born right after Thanksgiving. So I got 4 weeks, and then our company shuts down for the week of Christmas. So I was lucky enough to get 5 weeks. And so I ended up piggybacking California state leave on the back end of that. So I got 2 months and some change on that to stay home and provide care and then save that additional second month that California state leave that they give you for possibly later down the line.
So great.
We've really been living in the wild west of postpartum days these first weeks. Like these first 4 weeks have been crazy and we've learned so much and we've stayed up all night and slept until noon a lot of days, taking turns napping. Like I'll nap from 7 to 9, he'll nap from 9 to 11 kind of thing. And I'm really looking forward to this next second month of having Gino still at home so that we can really bond and do things as a new little family that there's no way we could have done month one.
I would like to piggyback off of that and say to all the new dads, take time off, take it. I know our society says, or our companies say, oh, we only get 2 weeks off. You got to get back to work. This is the mom's job to do this. But if you can take the time off, do it. It's so much work to do on your own. And I feel like for Alicia, for me to be there has been just an extreme amount of support. I can't even put it into words. It means so much at postpartum because I knew that, right? I was forecasting all of her emotions and how she was going to be feeling and the support that we had. So just to be there for her, and to be there for your wives, do it. I'm telling you, it makes a huge difference.
It's an amazing way to start off your family.
Yeah.
If you guys could pick one of your biggest takeaways from either the whole birth experience or what you got from classes, what would that be?
I think my biggest takeaway, can I have two?
You can have as many as you want.
My two biggest takeaways, one is I can do anything for 1 minute. And it really tied in my previous swim days with now, like I can do anything for a minute. I can change a diaper for 1 minute at 3 a.m. Like I can get out of bed and I can do this kind of thing, you know? And I'm sure there'll be like screaming toddler days where I'm like, I can survive 1 minute of crying. Like I know I can do this.
It's almost like the Mel Robbins 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get out of bed in the morning. Like that's so funny.
And sometimes it takes darn motivation to get up and change a 3 a.m. diaper.
Agreed.
So that was one of my best takeaways. And also just that I really can advocate for myself and it's okay. I have people pleasing tendencies up and down, left and right. And it's okay if I upset someone, if it's best for me or for my family. And it's not just in the medical realm, but with family and friends and throughout my whole life, that'll be something that I take with me.
Almost a new sense of power and understanding of yourself.
Yeah,
Awesome. If you don't take care of you, no one's going to take care of you.
truly.
So good. What about you, Gino?
Like we've been saying the whole time, the takeaways were make a plan together. The togetherness is a huge thing. Advocate for yourself during those times when you feel like you can't and you have a different plan in your own head than what's going on medically right there with those doctors. I mean, if it's safe, advocate for yourself and say, I need a second. Be extremely supportive any way that you can. Even though sometimes it may not feel right to you, whatever feels good to your partner at that time that they're going through, just be there for them. I mean, just being extremely supportive, that's the biggest thing. If you guys are on the same page and you have that game plan and one of you can go in extremely calm and collected and be there as a wholesome unit, it's not traumatic. And that was something that I got from this class was, we all see these videos or in the movies and it's extremely dramatic where people are screaming and there's doctors and beeping and loud noises and monitor. It's not like that. It doesn't have to be like that. It's a really intimate time with your wife and it's a beautiful thing. You just go into it with open mind and be there with your wife and, it can be easy and simple and fun.
Oh, that's the best way to end this whole first story. You guys, thank you so much for coming today and giving some inspiration to our listeners because I watched you come through the whole program, getting closer and closer each week and having deeper and deeper conversations, and especially the episode up with your dad. That extra practice and what you said today is really going to help a lot of people. So thank you for being here and good luck with little baby because he's so cute.
Thank you for all of your help. We wouldn't have been able to do this without you and your classes. So thank you as well.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Gino, for being here.
Thanks, Kara. We really, really appreciate everything that you've given to us, all the tools, all the advice. So thank you very much. And thanks for having us on today. We really appreciate it. We hope we can help future parents out. It takes a village, truly.
Truly takes a village. You are right about that. All right. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks for joining us today. And remember, it's your body, your choice, and finding your voice is your power. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us in all the places, and go to birtheducationcenter.com for our blog and more online education classes. And we'll see you next week.